Hello and welcome to Aero Innovations. I'm Aero and I'll be your host this evening. If you're new to the channel and you're looking to crush low stakes, no limit hold'em, then you've come to the right place. I guarantee you won't find a better place to learn how to beat low stakes, no limit hold'em than here on my channel. And since you're not paying me anything, then, I guess my guarantee isn't backed by a whole lot. But hey, maybe you'll find it to be true anyways. I'm happy to announce that I have a whole lot going on for me right now in terms of poker. When I first started vlogging about 8 months ago, I only featured 2-5 vlogs in education. And of course, we can't forget the random small Asian peepee joke. Hey, don't take offense, I'm allowed to say that since mine is the smallest of them all. Then one day, while playing 2-5 at the Win Encore as usual, I ran into David from the Absolute Nuts livestream channel. And if you guys watch their channel on YouTube, then you'll already know that I hold a regular seat in their game on the weekends at Resorts World. And if you're not familiar with their channel, they host the craziest 5-5 uncapped no-limit hold'em game in all of Las Vegas. All sorts of crazy side games are always in effect, like the 7 Deuce game for $50 a person, the Knit game for $25 a person, a 5-card double board bomb pot with freaking 6 communal cards in the middle. They also regularly have celebrity appearances, as well as VIPs from the poker community, and all sorts of other hectic poker shenanigans. So now you have my regular 2-5 vlogs. You can catch me on their live stream every weekend. And then recently, I also started playing multi-table online poker as well. So now and again, I'll throw in a few of those sessions, so you guys can see what sorts of hands I play with and what sorts of hands I fold in what positions. You get to see my thought process in real time when faced with on-the-spot decisions. Oh, but wait, there's more. So I posted a poll asking my viewers what sorts of stakes you guys play. 75% of you responded that you play either 1-2 or 1-3. So just for you guys, I'm going to throw out more 1-3 vlogs this year. It'll slow down my 100k challenge, and playing 1-3 live poker is mind-numbingly boring for me. But hey, whatever makes you guys happy, right? So this session takes place on Saturday night, although technically it's Sunday morning since it's after midnight. I just finished playing on the Absolute Nuts game, booking a win of over $5,300. I hop over to the Win Encore in Las Vegas to play some 1-3 no limit hold'em where I buy in for 300, which is 100 big blinds. I limit myself to only 100 big blinds so that the vlog can be more relatable to you guys, my loyal fans. So we start the session at 2:43 in the morning. About 20 minutes into the session, the under the gun, hijack, and button players all limp. I mean, this is 1-3. Everyone just loves limping, right? I look down at ace-queen offsuit in the big blind and raise the action up to $20. I'm going to be out of position for the rest of the hand, so I want to eliminate some of the limpers. If I were first into the pot, for instance if I were under the gun or somewhere similar in early position, I would only open raise this hand to 15. So for 20, 2 of the limpers fold, but the button calls. We go heads up to a flop of 5, queen, 3, rainbow. This is a pretty magnificent flop. Everyone expects you to hold an ace of some sort when you raise, but not always a queen. Since the board is pretty dry, I put out another c-bet of another stagnant 20. The button calls again. The turn is a 10 of hearts, putting 2 hearts on board. Forgetting that this is 1-3, I decide to put in a check, hoping to induce a bet so that we can check raise. But of course, 1-3 players are not very aggressive, so my opponent just checks the action back. The river is a deuce of diamonds. 4-6 makes the nuts, and ace-4 makes a wheel. I haven't shown a whole lot of strength so far, so I'm hoping my opponent will call light with whatever weird hand he might be holding. So I throw out a timid, slightly smaller than half-pot bet of 40 into the pot of $87. My opponent starts to tank. He asks me if a 10 is good, and in my head, I can only boggle and wonder what sort of combination he could possibly call me with on the flop that contains a 10. I don't want to make myself dizzy thinking about it though, but a better question is, what sort of combination contains a 10, hits that 10, but now contemplates a fold for this small amount? But eventually, my opponent does make the fold, asking again if his 10 was good. I tell him that it may or may not have been good, but I'm not about to give him that information for free. A little over 20 minutes later, the cutoff and button limp. I look down at ace-king offsuit, once again in terrible position in the small blind. So once again, same as before in the last hand when I had ace-queen, I raise the action up to 20. For this price, the cutoff calls, but the button folds. The cutoff is the same opponent we faced in the last hand. So the flop comes, and it's Jack, Jack 5 with 2 clubs. We flop absolutely nothing except 2 random overcards. If the flop had been rainbow, I would throw out a small c-bet here. It would be a really polarizing flop, but since there are 2 clubs out there, I don't want my opponent to call my c-bet with a club draw and potentially steal the pot from me in future streets, so I just check. My opponent checks the action back. He would most likely have bet if he had a jack, due to the 2 clubs, so I know I'm most likely good right now. 1-3 players can't help but bet when there's 2 to a suit. 2-5 players tend to be a bit more tricky. So the turn comes, and it's an 8 of hearts. Unless my opponent is randomly holding an 8 here, we should still be good. So I throw out a delayed c-bet of $10. He quickly makes the fold, so we punish him a second time for limp calling. Before the start of this hand, our old table has broken, so we've been moved to a new table. Here, the middle position limps. I raise the action up to $10 with ace-4 of clubs. Everyone else folds, but the middle position calls. The flop comes 9, king, 7 with 2 clubs. This is an above average flop. Not only are there 2 clubs out there, giving us the nut flush draw, but that king is a great scare card to use for our range. So when our opponent checks, I start laying the groundwork for us to either hit or bluff if we do not. I throw out an above average c-bet of 15 into the pot of 23, representing as if I have a strong king and don't like that flush draw. My opponent makes the call. The turn is a jack of diamonds, not improving our hand at all, but 2 Broadway cards are definitely better for us than it is for him limp calling. So when he checks, I continue with another bet of 20, keeping the momentum going in preparation for a massive bluff on the river if we don't hit. Again, he makes the call. The river brings in an ace of spades. We miss our flush, but we do hit our ace. Again, our opponent checks. Okay, so we know that he only has a check calling type of hand. If I had to guess, he has king 10 very specifically, and king queen maybe a small percentage of the time. If this river had missed us, I would have thrown out a massive overbet to like 150 into the $93 pot. But since it's an ace, even though we're literally sitting here with ace rag, we know that our opponent shouldn't be sitting there with ace king. I doubt he has ace 9 or ace 7 either, but you never really know with 1-3 players. I think I'm good right now though, and since we actually rivered a hand with value, we don't need to bluff here. Instead, I want to target that king 1 pair holding, and I'm going to use a bet size so small he can't refuse. I decide to milk him for another $20. He quickly makes the call. We table our ace rag, and it's good. I know that I've only shown 3 small winning hands so far, but I haven't bothered to show you all the small hands that I've played and lost without going to showdown. So before this hand, I was actually in the hole for $50 and had to top off. After this hand, I'm actually finally in the profit for 8 whopping doll hairs, bringing our stack to a very exciting $358. I normally buy in for the table max, which for the 1-3 at the win would be $500, but a lot of you guys don't have deep stack games at your local casinos, so I'm trying to keep these strategies more relatable. Only a couple minutes later, Under the Gun opens for 15. This is a pretty standard raise here at the win for an above average hand. I look down at ace king offsuit in the middle position. I have positioned to the original raiser, and I'd also like to isolate and maintain that positional advantage, so I 3-bet to 45. The hijack cold calls with a stack of about 180. What's even more surprising is that the big blind also cold calls with a stack of about 700. Suddenly, the original raiser Under the Gun puts in an absolutely massive 4-bet to 220 with a stack of about 400, which covers me. This raise is just huge. I only have 358, so it's either fold or shove here with my stack. I contemplate my actions for a moment. I have blockers to aces and kings. I think a lot of 1-3 players are more likely to put in a milky 4-bet when they have aces or kings though, since they're so afraid of losing value. Probably to the tune of like 145 or so, which would actually be the wrong play. A raise to 220 here is actually the correct price point considering all of the trapped money. But I think this price point, coming from a 1-3 player, is more of a hand that's trying to protect her hand from a bad flop. So as long as she has jacks or queens, with all of that dead money, I'm getting great odds here. so I decide to 5-bet ship it for my entire stack. The hijack surprisingly folds, even though he's already invested $45. The big blind folds as well. But of course, the under the gun player makes the call. Let's pause for a moment and talk a little bit about strategy. The hijack cold called $45 when he only had a stack of 180. I caution against ever putting in a quarter of your stack with a cold call pre-flop, unless you're actually trapping with aces or kings. There's no hand you could possibly be holding here that would give you the right price point, especially when the original raiser might just ship it in and you never get to see a flop, just like in this scenario. Okay, so now since we're both all in and there's a whole bunch of trapped money, we go heads up in a massive 1-3 all-in pot to a flop of Jack, Jack, King, Rainbow. We flop top pair with top kicker, which is a whole lot better than flopping nothing at all. The turn is an 8 of spades, and the river is a 3 of diamonds. I table our hand, hoping that our opponent has very specifically pocket queens, and thankfully that's actually exactly what she turns over. So we scoop this pot of over $800. Uh-oh, I have ammo now, guys. We're in deep stack territory. Watch out. Hey, what's up guys? Aero from Aero Innovations Poker here. As you guys may or may not know, I endorse 2 clubs on the Club GG platform now. I endorse the Cheddar Club and the High Roller Club. And they both have some crazy, wicked good action. I don't know if you guys have checked it out yet, but I recently released a video where I'm playing 1-2 and 2-4, and I made a quick $1,400 playing for like 45 minutes. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the differences between the 2 clubs. Oh, also quick shout out, one of the players that joined under my affiliate link won a huge bad beat jackpot playing Omaha. He made a royal flush as the winning hand against a smaller straight flush, and he won like 23,500 or so. That's amazing. I love it when my players win money. Anyways, the Cheddar Club, if you like fast-paced action, I suggest the Cheddar Club. They have smaller tables, 5-6-handed. They have, you have your usual micro stakes. You have your mid stakes, 1-2, 2-4. You also have your 5-10. The tables are smaller and they have ante, but the cap is also smaller. So like it's only 100 big blind caps for most of the game. So if you're playing 1-2, it's just 200 cap, and if you're playing 2-4, it's just a 400 cap. If you check out the High Roller Club, it's a little bit different. They have bigger tables, so 7-handed. Some of the games are 8-handed if you play the bomb pot games. And they have a higher cap of 200 big blinds. So yeah, totally different. They don't have ante. Different table selection, but they're both great. And they both have bad beat jackpots depending upon the game. So check them out, and I'll be hosting meetup games soon. I'll let you guys know. Hope to see you guys there. 30 minutes later, there's a live 6 under the gun, and a dead 20. A dead 20 is a blind raise to $20, since there are no double straddles here at the win. The middle position folds, but I raise the action up to 60 in the low jack with king-queen offsuit. The cutoff, our opponent from the last hand who cold called the $45 raise with his $180 stack, only to fold to a shove, decides it's now time to shove in for the rest of his stack. He only has 150 though. For this aggression, everyone else folds. But since I've already committed $60, I'm pot committed to call. We are almost certainly behind to this aggression, but let's hope he only has a small to middling pocket pair, as opposed to ace-king or ace-queen that dominates us. So the flop comes ace-queen-queen with 2 clubs, which is an absolutely marvelous sight to behold. The turn is a 7 of spades, and the river brings in a very unsavory ace of hearts. Thankfully, our opponent turns over pocket 8s, so we table our hand to win another juicy pot. Another 30 minutes passes before the start of this hand. Here, the low jack opens to 12. The cutoff calls. I call as well on the button with king jack offsuit. The flop comes 7, jack 10, rainbow. 8-9 makes the nuts. We flop top pair with a great kicker while in position. The low jack starts with a half pot c-bet of 20 into the $40 pot. The cutoff calls. This is a perfectly reasonable bet amount. We might be ahead here, but we might not. There's no reason to do anything other than to just call, so that's what we do. The turn is a 3 of hearts, keeping the board perfectly rainbow. The low jack now puts in a considerably smaller bet with relevance to the pot to the tune of $40 into the $100 pot. That's suspicious. Unlike the flop bet, I think he's trying to see a cheap river with this bet size. The cutoff contemplates what to do while playing with his stack of 140. If he sticks it in, I'm definitely calling. But instead, he eventually decides to fold. I contemplate raising here. However, my hand is pretty vulnerable to many different rivers. I'm almost positive I'm currently good. Had my opponent bet larger, like to 60 or 70 or so, I would only just flat call. But 40 really makes me think he's trying to see a cheap river. But still, if his hand is really that weak, I do have position. So I might be able to make more money here if I just call as opposed to putting in a light raise. So that's what I decide to do. The river is a king of diamonds, improving our hand to top 2 pairs. We are now crushing ace-king, but losing to ace-queen. Depending upon what our opponent does, we'll get a sense of how strong his hand is. So when I see him throw out an incredibly weak river bet of only $45 into the now very heavily bloated pot of 180, that's just not going to fly. He most likely has a middling jack of some sort. We probably didn't even need the river. So how much can we possibly extract from a naked jack? I decided to just put in a very milky raise to 145, which is still considerably smaller than the pot. Even for this very small raise, my opponent tanks. So I decide to start talking to potentially sway his decision. Do you want to be on the vlog? No, I mean, like, do you want your face or no?
I don't want my face.
Okay, then I'll just keep it as is.
You can put my face instead of his. How's that?
How about I put your head on his body, or like bobbing back and forth?
That's good.
Okay, so you're by default tight on 1-3, but is it also player dependent?
Oh, definitely.
Of course. Okay.
This is a really thin raise.
Really thin?
Yeah.
Did you hit a king?
I don't know. I'm just saying. Like, I might be trying to bluff you off a jack.
Are you trying to bluff off of 2 pair?
Oh, I don't know. Do you have 2 pair? What the heck? 2 pairs? A snap call if I have 2 pair in your shoes. So my table talk works. He puts in the call. We table our hand and take down another nice sized pot. Even though my opponent said he had 2 pairs during our verbal duel, I think he was only just trying to gauge my reaction. I overheard him talking to his neighbor about his hand, and he said he only had a jack with a straight draw, so likely a hand like jack 8 or jack 9 suited. Had my opponent made a large pot-sized bet on the river, I would have only just called. Okay, so now let's take a moment to look at things from his perspective. What hand could I possibly be bluffing here with? Even king-queen makes at least top pair. He really can't be calling here with just a naked jack. I'm never going to have ace-king or ace-queen here since I didn't 3-bet on the button, so my most likely range of hands is going to be king-10, king-queen, or in this case, king-jack, and all 3 of those hands will beat his naked jack. 5 minutes later, there's another live 6 and a dead 20 again. I raised the action up to $60 in the middle position with my least favorite premium starting hand. Oh yes, we're talking about the accursed pocket kings. Everyone folds around to the dead 20, who's sitting there with all of his chips racked up and ready to leave. He actually has a very respectable stack of about 1,000 or so. I think he's contemplating just folding and leaving. So I tell him if he calls, we can just check the action down if he wants. So my opponent quickly agrees to my offer and puts in his calling chips, turning over 10 jack off suit as I turn over my pocket kings. The flop comes ace, jack, ace, rainbow. The turn is the deuce of diamonds, and the river is the 3 of spades. So I win another $40 I might not have otherwise won if my opponent has simply folded. 30 minutes later, I open to 10 in the middle position with pocket 7s. I was about to just take a peek at this last hand and then leave, but it's too late for me now. The button calls with a stack of about 750. The small blind calls as well. Suddenly, the big blind puts in a massive 3-bet to $60 with a stack of about 950. He's the same opponent we faced when we had the king-jack and river 2 pairs. This is a very respectable raise amount, and the appropriate size he should be using. A lot of weaker players might put in a very weak raise here to like 30 or even 40, which would be a poor choice considering he's going to be out of position and considering all of the people that had already called my $10 raise. Plus, you have to account for how deep we are. Okay, so remember how weak my opponent's bets were when he only had a naked jack? They were very meek. So a raise of this size indicates massive strength. Players in the low stakes very often telegraph the strength of their hand with the size of their bets. Oh man, is this the part where I'm about to get stacked and will be forced to sit back down to play like a zombie for the next several hours trying to get even? Well, since I'm getting more than the 10-to-1 odds I need to set mine, I make the call. The button calls as well, but the small blind folds. We go 3 ways to a flop, which comes 7 queen deuce with 2 hearts. We flop middle freaking set, only losing very specifically to pocket queens. The board is incredibly disconnected, but there are 2 hearts. I would love to see a continuation bet from the big blind here, but instead he checks. Sad times. If we were heads up, I might consider checking this action back, or betting incredibly small, but since there's that third wheel, I can't let this flop check through. The worst case scenario is if a random 8 or 9 hits the turn, or even a 10 or a jack, and then one of my opponents ends up with a bigger set that they might have folded to a flop bet. I've made that mistake before when I wasn't as seasoned of an adventurer. I have since learned, so that's not about to happen again. I throw out a slightly over half pot bet of 100 into the pot of 190. Unfortunately, both of my opponents fold, with the big blind saying he had pocket jacks. I thought he might have called at least one time with jacks there, but I guess he must think I have a queen. This is why my advice is always, if you go set mining, you need implied odds of at least 10-to-1 on your money, if not more. Even though your odds of flopping a set are 1 in 8, many of the times that you do flop a set, you might not actually get paid, and some of the time you might even lose. So after this hand, I rack up my chips and head to the cage. In for $350 and out for $13.79 for an amazing profit of $1,029 after only 2 hours and 56 minutes of playtime. This is while limiting myself to only a 100 big blind cap buy-in. Again, I had already played over 5 hours on live stream, so I couldn't stay too much longer. Still, 3 to 4 hours is my usual duration for a session anyways. I have to admit, this is a way above average session. I didn't lose any big hands at all. Hopefully you guys can still get something out of it, like how much to raise and in what positions, what hands are acceptable to call off a raise to, or to shove with, stuff like that. That ace-king against pocket queens was the only dicey hand tonight. It turns out, that particular opponent was actually incredibly aggressive. She made a similar play later with ace-jack suited, calling off an all-in $300 shove pre-flop. She also later called an all-in $300 shove with a 7-high flush draw. And in a different hand, she raised a $20 bet to $220 and then called off an all-in shove. Meanwhile, after the board ran out, she couldn't even beat top pair, nor did she have the flush either. So yeah, it just so happened that she had queens against my ace-king in that hand, but that was probably the very tippy top of her range.
Alright guys, we are about to do the $500 March drawing. These are the 13 contestants who have earned enough rake to qualify for the drawing. In no particular order, I have written them down, and now I'm about to roll the dice to see who wins the drawing. Alright, good luck everyone. Number 10, that's dir20, Contact me on Instagram and provide proof that you are dir20, and you've just won $500. Alright guys, I'll be doing more drawings in the future.
In terms of my 100k challenge, I ended up suffering a small loss in January, even after an amazing start of being up over $8,000. But February and March has been treating me much better. I haven't been able to put in very many hours in March, but it looks like I'm getting back on track towards a late October finish for my 100k challenge. Anyways, let me know in the comments if you'd like to see more of this kind of footage, as opposed to my usual 2.5 deep stack vlogs. Okay, so now if you're still watching this and you're not subscribed, I really need your help. My wife and I work for less than minimum wage to get these vlogs out for you guys. Our statistics show that at least half of you watch my stuff regularly, but you're not subscribed. It would do us a huge favor if you watch our content and just hit that subscribe button. It helps the algorithm to know that people actually watch our stuff, so they would broadcast it further. It doesn't cost you anything to just like and subscribe to my videos, but it helps us a whole ton. I'm really hoping to expand our viewer base so we can get my content out to more viewers. Also, if you're interested in more of my coaching videos, please feel free to check out our Patreon. And as always, I hope to see you in the next video.